So, stat weights. I've noticed quite a bit on forums recently. People are obsessed with stat weights. On the face of it, you can understand why. If you have a set of stat weights, how powerful your secondary stats are, and your strength is, and your weapon DPS is, then you can work out a set of BIS gear, which is what people want. I want to know what my BIS item is. The problem is that the way WOD has panned out, and the way Tier 18 especially has panned out, the answer to that is tough. Here is your issue. When it comes to a BIS list, yes, there is a BIS list, and I'll put that up at the end of the video as a grand summary. But you've got to bear in mind, you can't stick rigidly to it. And there's two main reasons for this. One, a number of your BIS items will drop off Archimonde. Now, if you're a Mythic Raider, obviously you can't really count on getting Archimonde items. You might get the odd one from a cache, as long as it's not the class trinket or a weapon. But in general, you're not going to get it until you kill that boss. And once you've killed Mythic Archimonde, it's over. You're farming anyway. And we know there's no more raid tier coming. Okay, they might sneak in like an extra Ruby Sanctum type raid boss. But there's, if they were at all planning on introducing a proper raid tier after it, they wouldn't have said no, there's no more raid tiers, and they wouldn't be keeping it completely under wraps either, because they know that people are already quite dissatisfied with this expansion. So we're not going to get another raid tier before the next expansion launches. So what are we really gearing up for once we kill Mythic Archimonde? Well, leveling. Great, thanks, great. So it doesn't really matter. So ignore anything like that. And if you're, you know, a heroic raider who will intend to clear, say, most of Mythic before the expansion, again, you've still got to bear in mind, what do you think your last boss will be? Because anything after that, you're not going to get the items from it. So the BIS list is quite tricky. The other thing that makes it tricky is the fact that there are 4 different item levels represented in each difficulty of Hellfire Citadel. So sometimes it doesn't really matter about the stats as such. Sometimes item level just wins. If the stat weights are close enough together, and for Retribution they reasonably are. There is the odd item where highest item level isn't automatically better, but not very often. But what people want, and they want to know what is the order of stats. Well, that changes later as well. I'll show you later on Simcraft how your stat weights can change quite a lot. All I would say is, the only thing you'd be sure of, you are probably on balance better off favouring Mastery and Multi-Strike. Mastery and Multi-Strike items in general favour those. But the values can vary quite a lot. Haste, people really get hit up on. The thing about haste is people have this idea what you want is this. You favour haste up until this 15% magical number, and then go on to other stats. The 15% was bandied about a little bit at the start of WOD, and then instantly regretted by everyone who mentioned it. Forget about it. Completely ignore it. Haste, I'll explain a bit later exactly why haste's value jumps around a lot, but it jumps around a lot. Largely ignore it. I'm not saying haste is bad, it's not. None of the stats are bad. But largely ignore it, and certainly don't favour it. I mean, apart from anything else, if you think about your level 100 talents, your haste value, if you have empowered seals, while ever your righteousness judgment buff is up, you've got an extra 20% haste there anyway. And it won't be up throughout the whole fight, unless you want to lose DPS here and there. So your value of haste changes in that fight anyway. If you've got Seraphim, you get an extra 1,000 haste just from using Seraphim. So roughly, if you keep it up well, half of the fight, roughly just a bit under, you're going to have an extra 1,000 haste anyway. So your value of haste changes when using Seraphim. It's only stable when you're using Final Verdict, and even then if you're not silly enough to put haste on your weapon. So your value of haste change. This idea that there's this magical number to hit is a total fallacy, and forget about it completely. Mastery multi-strike is what you want to favour. Beyond that, in general, you're probably going to say a better item level is better on your gear, which is what Blizzard wanted. As I say, it's not exclusively the case, but you're not going to go far wrong by going on that. Obviously, making sure you keep your 4-set bonus. I'll mention more about that later as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do, for those who do insist that they want to know what their stat weight's for, maybe your guild demands it, and they demand a BIS list, I can understand that. What I'm going to go through, I'm going to go through how to use Simcraft to find your stat weights at any particular time. But again, remember, this is, they change. You just swap out one piece of gear and your stat weights change, or you change the conditions in Simcraft from, say, a single target fight to an ad fight or an AoE fight, and it'll change as well. But if you have to come up with a stat weight, I'll show you how you can find it for yourself. And I'll show you how you can use it in-game with an add-on to work out how much of an upgrade different pieces of gear are. Again, if you have to, especially in a loot council situation, be able to say straight off the bat how much of an upgrade is a particular item worth. Okay, so that's the aim of this video, really. Okay, so the first thing to be will be download Simcraft. So this is where you'll find it. You'll need to download the latest one. Now, what you often find is that once you've done that and set it up, okay, you can use it. This last updated quite a while ago. So what you want to do when you've downloaded the basic version is have a look here for the latest version. This is a much more recent one. And then download that and then put that into your Simcraft folder. So it's got all the latest modifications. Because, you know, Simcraft is not produced by Blizzard, remember, it's other people. So they're having to model how the items should behave and how the characters should behave. And sometimes that is refined and improved on. But I've already got it installed, so I'm just going to... Oh, sorry, I had it there. I'm just going to open up Simcraft and show you how we're going to use it. Now, first thing to do will be to have a look in some options. You're going to import your character. So it's important that you've got the right armory region, so EU in my case. Iterations, the more of these you have, the longer it will take, but also the more accurate it will be. I mean, there's RNG in the game, and of course that RNG will be reflected in the sim. So the more iterations you have, the more they are smoothed out, so you don't get extremes. Edit the fight length, so the typical fight that you want to be thinking about. And then think about the type of fight you want to do it for. So I've put light movement here, which is largely single target fight, but with a little bit of movement here and there. Player skill, it can try and compensate for player skill if you don't think you're playing the classes as well as you might. Most of these you probably won't really touch. Other things, obviously you're going to have all the buffs and debuffs, so to speak. Enable scaling. For the character stats, so that you can actually see your stat weights. Then what you'll want to do is to import your character. So type in the name of your character. Come on today. There we go. So there's my character. In just the set of gear I logged out in. This is just what I was soloing around with. It's not for any particular fight, but just to show you that, you can import that, and then you get this. And then what you do when your options are all set and you're happy enough with it, you just click simulate. This will take a little while, so what we'll do, just like on a cookery program, we'll be back later. Okay, so here we go, it's done now. It tells us in these conditions what my DPS should be. Don't worry too much about that. Obviously, the sims don't model the fights exactly. You're just choosing whichever model in sim best suits the fight. What we're really looking for are these stat weights. There's a lot of things in here. You can have a little scroll and you can read into various things. But ultimately, this video is about gear, and if people want to try and calculate their BIS stats, then what they want are stat weights. So here we've got the stat weights. These are the ones that will be useful. you could put there's an add-on as well if you're wanting to see how much of an upgrade something is, called Pawn, which I'm going to show you later as well in use. And these stat weights are useful there as well. You could put these in. And I just want to have you a little show about this. What I've also done, just to show you how these can change, is I've gone into my character and I've logged out again and swapped it to a set of gear that I would actually use in a single target situation. So I'm just going to open the character up again. So come on. Right, so I've changed to a different trinket and a different talent there to bring it more in line with how I'd approach a single target fight. So I'm going to import this one. And I'm going to keep the same options. So I'm just going to simulate this again. Yet again, back later. Okay, so we're back with the new set. We can see it says we're going to do significantly more damage, as we'd expect. Again, you've got your weights here. Now, let's just have a little look at this. Just forget about the numbers from the moment, which are there. If you look at the order of it, telling us multi-strike better than crit, versatility, mastery, quite low down, haste. If we look at these ones, quite similar. Okay. The numbers will be very different, of course. Again, just showing how these things change significantly when you've got slightly different gear and one extra talent. Now what I'm going to suggest we do is we'll still stick with this one. We'll go with the first one actually, because that's more set up for AoE situation. So what I'm going to do is, oh dear, where do we want options? I'm just going to change it to we could either, with a couple of options, we could either have Beast Lord, which is basically single target but adds appear in it, or we could have much more of a hectic add cleave, where there's just lots of adds up. So we'll have that one. We'll go back to this profile, which is set up for that a bit better, and we'll simulate this one. Okay, so third time's the charm, back later. Okay, so yet again we're back. So what we'll look at here again is the stat weights. Again, the values have changed quite a bit. The order has now changed, of course, because this is much more AoE. Mastery has jumped up. And bear in mind, I didn't make massive changes. I didn't go back into my character as such to change it into trinkets that I might use for an actual hectic ad cleave. It was just reasonable. It had the final verdict there, which again, mastery jumps up in value, especially when you're going to use final verdict and divine storm weaving, which you would in a hectic ad cleave fight. So it does show you that the stat weights do change very, very much. They change with the fight you're going to do. They change with the gear you've got. Every time you equip a new piece of gear, your stat weights have changed again. So constantly trying to do this on the fly is not ideal. Okay. But as I say, I'll show you how to use Pawn, the add-on, if you did want to use stat weights or use a standard set of stat weights to update your gear. What I would suggest is just pick a set of gear that seems reasonable for you, the sort of gear you like to use on most fights, and pick whichever of the options, single target or AoE, that you think you will most focus on. Probably single target, if we're honest. Even on fights where there is cleaving, you're probably going to be focusing on single target because we are much stronger at it. Unless it's sustained AoE, we're pretty good at that too. But when it's short burst AoE or when it's two target cleave, we're not so strong on that. Okay, so how can you make use of stat weights if you want to go with those? Well, you could use an add-on called Pawn. This is one thing, P-A-W-N, that is. So when you have this in, P-A-W-N, it's got some set stat weights which will be no good at all. These are useless. So what you want to do is to create your own one. So we'll call this what we like. Retnob will do. And then you can put in your own values. So we don't need them normalizing. So if we say that one strength, if I go by what the stamina gives me nothing. I don't know what that's doing there. What I got from Simcraft. Then I can note down a few things here. So what did it give me? Crit said 5.6. Haste was 3.66. Mastery 5.23. Multi-strike 5.79. Versatility 5.36. Oops. Now let's just check that there's nothing else in there that would be snooker in it. Weapon DPS, we've put that in 11.87. Okay. And then what we can do is a couple of things we can do. Let's say we go to Hellfire Citadel and look at some of the loot items we can get. We can show here, and it's noting down that I'd get an 11% upgrade from this net compared with what I've got, according to my Retnub stats. 4% that. Now, do bear in mind, it's telling me that these gloves would be an upgrade. Does that mean I would use those gloves? No, it does not, because what it doesn't take into account, of course, is the fact that my gloves are tier gloves, and I would lose set bonuses for that. It's only taking into account the stats on them. So, you know, there are certain other things you need to do. The other thing it won't do, if I show you on complete, is it won't really comment on trinkets. It knows full well that trinkets aren't all about the stats. This is the only one with that only has just stats on it. So you'll have to get those relative values from somewhere else, probably Simcraft itself, if you can use the most up-to-date value. Okay, but again, you can use this. You can see I get no upgrade anymore from that neck. This is telling me I've already got that, so that's already my BIS. So if we look, for example, difference a weapon makes, 15% upgrade for that weapon. All right. Again, nothing for the trinket. So you can go through these in that way. You can go through in your bags, for example, hovering over these. None of them are telling me it's an upgrade on what I already have. So it's telling me those shoulders would be actually my best items. But again, if I swap that in, I lose my 4 set bonus, so I'm not going to do that. But you can do that for items in your own gear if you're not sure what to swap in. But as I say, because your stat weights will change quite a bit, do be a little bit careful. Especially if you have an item, let's just try and find one, that maybe tells you it would only be quite a small upgrade. So this one, for example, for my Retribution, the stats I put, it says a 3% upgrade. Maybe it is on some fights, maybe it's a bigger upgrade than on others. So, you know, if it's like over 10%, probably it is a definite upgrade. On lower ones, maybe not quite so much. Okay, so that's how you can use that add-on. It's how you can use Simcraft to get your stat weights if you really want them, and it's how you can use an add-on to allow you to tell which gear might be an upgrade, especially in a pug situation, or you've got to make a quick decision, or maybe even a guild situation. You have to make a quick decision about how much of an upgrade it is over you, whether it's a small upgrade or a big upgrade. It gives you an actual value, as long as it is a swap for swap. Just remembering, it won't do trinkets, and it won't do it won't take account of the fact that you'd be losing a tier bonus. So don't just randomly click on something that looks like a massive upgrade, and then you think to yourself, but yeah, I'm losing my set bonus by doing it. That's not clever. Okay. Okay, so to finish off, this is the BIS list as promised. But as I say, in reality, it's not the set you will be aiming for. And I'll just go through the reasons why. First of all, this is assuming that you have access to all of the bosses in a particular difficulty. So if the highest difficulty you're going for is heroic, say, and you're not killing any mythic bosses and you're not getting any mythic caches, then you could consider this your BIS list. Similarly, if you're into mythic raiding and you have access to all the mythic bosses, which very few Retribution Paladins will at the moment, I'm sure, if any. But again, you could consider this your BIS list. Where, of course, it's going to slip up is the fact that you'll be thinking to yourself, like I'm at the moment on 9 out of 13 as we stand. So some of these items I only have access to on heroic mode. Well, maybe there's a mythic item of the same slot on one of the middle bosses in Hellfire Citadel that I do have access to that is better. So again, you need to sort of compare, really. If a mythic of another slot is better than heroic of this slot, and you need to keep updating it as you're killing more and more bosses. The other thing that puts a fly in the ointment is sockets, especially on most gear. Sockets really do. For example, a ring. I have a mastery multi-strike ring. It's very nice. It's heroic though. Now I'm killing the boss that drops it on mythic, so in theory I have access to the mythic version of the ring. But if the mythic version of the ring dropped, is it an upgrade for me? No, it's not, because the heroic ring that I have has a socket, so that means it's also got a 75 mastery gem in it, which means that the standard mythic ring is not an upgrade. It's 59 levels higher. It's not an upgrade for me. So you do need to consider, if you get an item that might not be considered your BIS, but if it's socketed or warforged, it might actually make it better than your BIS one. The stats, remember, the stat weights, not only do they keep changing around from fight to fight and as your gear changes, but they're quite close together a lot. There's not huge differences like there maybe are for some other classes or specs. So this is the BIS list if you want a BIS list, but take it with a grain of salt. Often item level wins, not always, but often it does. You're not going to go far wrong with item level is better, unless of course it's a socket and the item level isn't that much better. Okay, but there you go. See how you get on with that, and that's all I can really do. The only thing I will summarise with is just to say that it's very difficult to think of a BIS list if you came here thinking I just want to know what my BIS list is. It's not as simple as it sounds. Hopefully I've tried to explain that and given you the tools to sort of take ownership of it yourself. But I do understand that sometimes guilds ask for a BIS list and you have to put something down, and you know, you could put something like this down. There we go. See you later.